Dynasty mode is alive and well in College Football 25, and we are truly living our best lives. I made a short video about the best teams to use for your Dynasty rebuilds before the game came out, and now that it's out, I wanted to revisit it in a longer video. We've got several areas of discussion in this, and please know that the ratings and rosters used in this are the default ones prior to any updates from EA. Let's keep it simple to start. Here's the teams that suck the most based off of their overall ratings. The worst team in the game is Ball State, checking in at 68 overall. There's only two other teams that are below a 70, UL Monroe and UTEP. Of the three, I like UTEP the most because of the Texas recruiting aspect, but don't sleep on the Warhawks and quarterback General Booty. Man, I love saying that name. Beyond that, there's 21 other teams that are a 75 overall rating or below, which you see on your screen now. We'll dive further into some of these teams moving forward, but some of these depend on your play style. Of course, if you want to run the option, Air Force and Army are right up your alley. Some of these teams have better recruiting grounds based on their state, like the Georgia teams, Georgia State and Georgia Southern, and San Jose State out in California. Another way to go about it is picking a team that wasn't available in NCAA 14 when we were last playing a college football video game. Those teams are App State, Coastal Carolina, Charlotte, Georgia Southern, Jacksonville State, James Madison, Kennesaw State, Liberty, and Sam Houston State. Let's start off by looking at my picks from the world of Group of 5 teams. These are teams in conferences that aren't the ACC, Big 10, Big 12, or SEC. We begin with Arkansas State, and you could build them up brick by brick, just like Butch Jones. They've got a really good offensive line for year one, and 380-plus overall receivers, 2 of which are juniors. Quarterback Jalen Rayner is only a sophomore and a 79 overall with 84 speed. I'm not sure why, but they also have 11 defensive tackles. Just thought I'd mention that. Their secondary is pretty solid too. The safeties are both 75 or better, and they have 5 corners that are 72 overall or better. Plus, they have a sweet fountain in their stadium too, which I don't think anyone else in college football has. Ball State, we mentioned them previously. They're one of the worst teams overall-wise in the game. Actually, the worst overall team in the game. But if you like mobile quarterbacks, their first 2 on the depth chart are pretty good. They're an 87 and an 83 speed, respectively. A little option game, anyone? Colorado State is next up, and they have one of the best receivers in the Group of 5 and maybe college football overall, in Torrey Horton, who is a 91 overall on the game. Plus 6 other players are in the 80s or better. Unfortunately, all but one of those guys are seniors, so you will definitely be doing some rebuilding in year 2 to that roster. East Carolina is coming off a super bad season a year ago. I like the Pirates just because they have some of the best jerseys in the game. That purple and gold is unmatched. You also have a lot of natural in-state rivalries and schools you can compete with in North Carolina. They don't have any amazing standout players other than 88 overall corner Siobhan Revel, but they do have the infamous 12 overall quarterback James Moore. That's the challenge of the century there. Maybe you can try and start a dynasty with the 12 overall quarterback. Let's go to the MAC now. Eastern Michigan may have one of the worst overall rosters in the game with no players above a 79 overall. You can also play in Crosby Field, which has that beautiful gray turf. It is named after EMU legend Max Crosby. Central Michigan is also apparently EMU's father in this rivalry, which I didn't know, so you can try and catch up maybe over the years, although it's going to take a lot of work to do that. I also really like their playbook if you stick with what they run offensively. I'm going to group these next 2 together, Florida Atlantic and Florida International, because neither is really good, and they both are in South Florida, which is prime recruiting grounds on the game. Maybe you can win a natty and be back before Miami if you take the job at one of these 2 schools. Oh yeah, and FIU has these sexy Miami Vice jerseys, but they're not on the game for some reason. But they should be, damn it. The Owls spanked the Panthers last year and own the series if that influences your decision. FIU also has the wide offense, which is a new playbook and play style on this game that's really fun. James Madison is up next, and this was actually suggested by a commenter who said on a previous video, so I wanted to throw them a little bone here and give them a shout out because I appreciate my viewers, guys. That's what you get here on SpicedUpGaming. He said the Dukes have a good quarterback and running back duo. I wasn't going to include them because they have had success since coming to the Power 5 ranks, but I think they're primed for a rebuild and could be moved to a bigger conference like the ACC relatively quickly in your dynasty. Although they've had a good couple of years, they do check in this game at only a 74 overall. Kennesaw State is up next. Kennesaw State, the newest team to come up from the FCS ranks to the FBS ranks. We talked about them on our short video. The biggest thing for the Owls is, of course, they are in the metro Atlanta area, which, like South Florida and like some other areas that we've mentioned in the video, that is a fertile recruiting grounds that you're going to want to like and you're going to want to make the most of. They've also got some cool jerseys, a cool stadium, and Kennesaw State overall, I think, is a team that a lot of people are going to be rebuilding in college football 25. Next up, we've got Liberty. This is a sneaky good group of 5 team to pick because you'll have an explosive offense in year 1. Quarterback Caden Salter is a 90 overall, as is running back Quentin Cooley. 2 90 overall players for the Liberty Flames. They also have 10 players that are an 80 overall or higher. I like their offensive playbook too. It's a nice blend of the shotgun and the pistol. North Texas, I'm going to mention the Mean Green for a couple of reasons. First is that name, the Mean Green, that's badass. Second, they play in Denton, just 30 minutes or so from the DFW area, which is like South Florida and Metro Atlanta and a premier recruiting ground. Third, they have 3 running backs that are 80 or better and a quarterback that's an 81 overall with 87 speed. You can do some fun things with that quartet of players alone, and only one of the backs, the worst rated at that, is a senior. Another fun one is Texas State with lots of offensive possibilities here. They have an 89 and an 86 overall running back, an 86 and 84 overall receiver, and an 85 overall quarterback with 87 speed. That is enough to make them a rebuild contender for sure, even if you're just using those offensive weapons for a year. Maybe a good spot to start as an OC. They also have a cannon when you score. Who doesn't love a cannon? Last up, we mentioned UTEP. They're one of the worst teams on the game. They have a really bad roster, of course. Only one player is above a 78 overall. Shout out to right end Maurice Westmoreland, who checks in at an 86. They have 2 quarterbacks who are 74 overall, and one is a junior and the other a sophomore. So you at least have them to work with. 2 decent running backs and just not much at all at receiver. However, being in Texas, if you can convince some kids to come based on location and playing time, you may be able to cook here. Next up, let's look at Power 5 picks for a good solid rebuild. I'll start in the SEC with the team I actually picked for my first dynasty, and that's Vanderbilt. I started as OC with the Commodores simply because they have a quarterback with insane speed. Quarterback Nate Johnson has a 95 overall speed in the game, which is one of the best for quarterbacks in the entire NCAA on College Football 25. Then you have a couple solid players at receiver, but I want to shout out Micah Bell, who was up to a 99 speed in year 2 for me, and a burner of a deep threat. The defense is legit, at least they were in simulation. I only played the offensive side of the ball. I actually got demolished by Ball State in year 1, and that led to me simming the rest of the season, in which I went on to beat Texas, Auburn, and Tennessee, finishing at 7-5 and somehow not making a bowl game. Anyways, Vandy is a good option here if you want a real challenge of the SEC grind. Next, let's go to the Big Ten for a couple teams. We'll start with Illinois, one of the worst Power 5 schools of the last decade plus, and they don't have much on their roster this year aside from 2 84 overall cornerbacks. Other than that, they're pretty much just decent in every other position group. Sticking in the conference, Indiana, another Big Ten bottom feeder over the years. They've assembled a pretty solid team for you to play around with in year 1, though, if you choose the Hoosiers. They've got 12 players at 80 overall or higher, and a couple nice transfers that come in, including quarterback Curtis Rourke, who transferred from Ohio, and they have some receivers who can make some crazy plays on the ball in the air, which you always like to see, especially if you like to take stupid gambles like I do. How about Miami? I got my jokes off about the Canes earlier in the video, but this is actually a fun team to play with on this game. Quarterback Cam Ward and running back Damian Martinez are a fun transfer duo coming in for the Hurricanes, and they have some real freaks on both sides of the offensive and defensive line. You could very well easily lead Miami to their first ever ACC title in year 1 since it wouldn't be Mario Cristobal coaching the team. And doesn't our mascot really look like this, though? That kind of looks like Big Bird if he did coke. Nebraska, you know, if I make fun of Miami, I have to throw Nebraska in, too. Both programs are in definite need of rebuilding to restore them to their glory days, and college football, frankly, is just better off when both teams are good. The Huskers have some solid pieces, too, but perhaps the most interesting is true freshman quarterback Dylan Raiola, who comes in at an 80 overall. He definitely made some freshman mistakes for me, but you can tell the talent is there, and he has a big arm. Just hope he doesn't transfer on you like he did 4 or 5 times in high school. I've always had an affinity for the Huskers. I love to see them return to prominence, even if their mascot is straight-up nightmare fuel. Couple more to get to. How about SMU, newcomer to the ACC, which is interesting, and I think they're more fun than Cal or Stanford, who are also joining the Atlantic Coast Conference. Also, geographically, it just makes more sense that California and Stanford being in the Atlantic Coast Conference. But anyways, they've got a squad. Quarterback Preston Stone is nice at 88 overall, and he's got plenty of weapons to throw to at tight end and receiver. Jordan Hudson is one of the dogs, a former 5-star receiver that transferred in. And as you can see here on this jet touch pass that I took to the crib for 6, he is nice. Like the aforementioned North Texas, they're also in fertile recruiting grounds in that DFW area. Last up, we've got Tulane, definitely a program that has been good recently. They don't really need rebuilding, I guess you could say, but I'm including the Green Wave because they have the most sweet jerseys and logo in the game, and it is not close. Debate with someone else because you're not going to debate with me. That's just facts. That's all we've got for the best schools to rebuild in your first Dynasty mode on College Football 25. Who will you be picking? Leave a comment on the video and let us know who and why. Also, if you enjoyed this content, please help your boy out and subscribe to the channel. I'll have plenty more videos coming over the next few weeks. Peace!